Okay, we're about there. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the April 11th board meeting for Thurston County Fire Protection District 8. And the first thing on the agenda is any public comments. We have our consultant here, would be the only one. Any of you folks, if you have any comments.
None.
Seeing none, Mr. Bonser's checking in. Okay, Drew's online. That's excellent. So the next thing on our agenda is the capital project, and Chief McBride.
Good evening. So this has been a project that's been going on for a couple of years in different starts and stops. It started back 2 years ago for doing the septic system expansion in Station 81. We put it out to bid twice. Both times we had issues with the bids when the prices were higher than what we had anticipated. So last year we decided not to do it in construction costs with the pandemic and whatnot. This year we feel like it might be a better time. Hopefully everything's somewhat settled down, as I'm sure Steve will talk about. At one point we thought about putting both the projects for Station 81, the septic system expansion, and the fire protection system project here at Station 83 together in order to hopefully get a better bid and maybe get some more bids because the project over here is quite larger. So we had anticipated to go out to bid late February, early March as we were doing some of the paperwork for the fire protection project. We started running into some hiccups. So we are proposing that we split the projects yet again, and so that we can continue to move ahead with Station 81. We don't know what we'll run into with Station 83. Steve expands some more.
Yeah. So we'll click on that button and go down one level. She explained it exactly right. What we found is that we were trying to get the bid in 21, the first time on the septic system, and we're faced with pandemic, labor, and supply chain, and that just destroyed the cost market. Fast forward 18 months, and we have resolved, I think, the supply chain. We don't hear a lot of talk about that. Prices are 18 months at some inflation rate higher, and labor is marginally better, but not much. What appears to be different now is availability. So where nobody was looking for work 2 years ago, even last year, we're starting to see people say, "You got anything?" So there's a little bit of that as a plus. One of the challenges with the mound system itself is that it's a fairly large, in terms of septic systems, it's a large project. B, being a public works outfit as you are, a lot of the septic installers aren't used to it. And there's lots of paperwork that goes involved. So a lot of septic installers say, I don't do this sort of thing. And so automatically some general contractor has to come in that's willing to take on that load that doesn't know anything about septic. And as she mentioned, the first bid, the low bid thought he could do it by himself, and he's not a qualified installer. So one of the thinking was that we would combine the work at 83 with 81 so that more general contractors would be interested and thereby maybe expand the market a little bit. And that was the plan as we headed into 2023 based on some of the work we did early last fall. However, one of the key elements to that here is the replacing the tanks. And well, the most economical way of getting fire storage tanks is to surplus a couple of old welded steel from Holy Wood, I think, 30 years ago, and then you can get them and get a really good cost return on them. Can't do that anymore. The next by far and above for this size of storage is a concrete tank that Baker Silo has been doing for the last 40 years, and welded, it's welded steel can't touch it in terms of cost. Problem with those tanks is they only come in certain sizes. And so in order to get that volume, the good news is that a tank that's equally tall and combined the same width gets about twice as much water. And so it's very effective and very efficient. The question was raised with the county last fall. If we just tear those two down and put up a new one, surely we don't have to go back through the whole special use permit and environmental review just to do that. And the planner said, yeah, that doesn't seem to make any sense. Go ahead and submit a site plan of what it is you want to do, and we'll look at it. So time went by, a couple months later, we had it all mapped out, submitted that in. This planner is no longer there, and the planner assigned to the project said, well, you've got more water in that tank. So that's a material expansion of the system. So you have to go through a special use permit and environmental review to the tune of about $15,000 in application fees. And I said, that can't be right. And so they went back and they put their heads together and talked to the upper management, got Department of Ecology involved, who authorizes or discusses SEPA review and environmental review. And they all concluded that if there was any more gallonage in the tanks, then yes, it would be back through the system. Because the original special use for this station had those tanks and no more. So the long and the short of that is that, my personal opinion as a ratepayer in this district, that's 15K out the window for no good reason at all. But more significantly for the plans for 23 is that kicks all the work here out 9 months. And the septic permit, which we had approved now almost 3 years ago, expires in November at 81. Hence, and therefore, et cetera, try and get that thing built this year. For your consideration, the rules of septic design really haven't changed. You have to submit again, get new fees, go through months, or a few months anyway, not 9. But probably no material change in the septic design itself. If you should you elect to do that, you could do that. Going back to some data we had from later part of 2022 in terms of equipment rates and labor rates that were in vogue. We're estimating, well, with a general contractor markup, just under 70 grand for the mound system out there. With the contingency and everything, we're 80K or something like that. Mm-hmm. The mound itself works great during COVID. Basically, it was public meetings, public attendance at events that would overload it. at today. So that's just a little bit of backstory on that too. And it's, 60% of adequate for how the station operated before COVID. So it's significantly under for how you used to run 81. And currently it's not.
So they're talking $70,000 to do the septic upgrade?
Yeah.
And what are they talking possibly for here?
The last numbers I looked at had about $3 a gallon for a tank, and that tank we had was 70,000 gallons. So $250,000.
So cost is what?
$250,000 for the reservoir.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does that include the 15,000 extra on top of it?
No, that's just, I was just looking on an entirely different subject, but at overall rates for excavation and piping and the pad and then the reservoir and some control and stuff is like $3 a gallon for these concrete reservoirs. So that's all it was just that.
But the $250,000 would have covered the whole project, including upgrading the fire suppression system also? Or is that
No,
just the reservoir?
that's just for which is the bulk of it, but it's just the reservoir itself. Part of that, the stuff that we've been talking about at 83 is the awning out front by code is supposed to be sprinklered. It is not. And the fire pump building is supposed to be sprinklered, and it is not. And it also doesn't have a backup generator for the fire pump. So the code on that backup generator is a lot fuzzier. It's, I would say encouraged or recommended, but not necessarily absolutely. You must have backup power on your fire pump. But not sure what the fire pump is if it can't run.
If it can't run, yeah, in the winter time with a storm.
So now we haven't advanced that to dial it all in. 60 horsepower per kilowatt generator's got to be bells and whistles and this, that, and the other thing. I mean, there's probably, with all that other stuff, I'd say it's probably 100K anyway, order of magnitude. Sprinkle this, sprinkle that, plumb some stuff in.
So how much for, you said for the generator, how much?
For the sprinkler room only.
Yeah, there's transfer switches and, so it's probably 100-ish maybe.
So altogether,
the
we're
sprinkler's
looking
not
at,
a big thing, but because we're just expanding what we have.
so altogether, we're looking at $350,000.
Yeah, I think order of magnitude, you're in that area, yeah. So, and now because of the permitting decisions that's a 2024 thing. And so one of the things would be to just get 81 taken care of and be done there and focus on this.
Okay. Do we have a Station 81 plan put together that would be available to be put out to bid?
Yes.
Okay, so that could happen at any time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Our request would be to go out for bids as soon as the bid package is ready to make sure. We have to announce it and whatnot and do that. Has to be approved monetarily yet. We go through the bids, accept and read them, and then they would come here before we would move forward with any.
Correct.
The one of the things we learned from the last time we did was, again, the question of availability of time. People were interested, but they weren't sure when. So we looking to stretch that period out, not only to respond to a request, but to give them months to get it in as it fits their schedule. There was a couple of other comments by bidders about some staging requirements, and we resolved those. Other than that, I think the bid package is basically ready. Perhaps with a couple of edits within a week, it could be ready. Just not the week after next, because I'm not here. But at any rate, yeah, it could be on the street. Sure.
Besides those changes, are there any material changes to compared to what was done last time? So I think I remember reviewing it all before. And if there were a lot of changes, I might want to do that again, but if it's otherwise the same, I'm not sure I'd see the point in.
Yeah, there, maybe one way to answer the question is, in looking at equipment and labor rates on public works jobs that we saw last fall, late summer, the estimate has come up more to meet the numbers we were seeing rather than the other way around, which there's not a lot of change and there's no change in the design.
Yeah, that's really what I was getting at was.
Yeah, the design hasn't
The work that
changed.
we're asking them to do is the same.
Pretty much the same. We've revised, like I said, the timelines. We pulled some stuff out of the concrete apron, and because asphalt's a little easier, it requires a little bit of extra fiddling, but I think the fiddling was cheaper than the concrete repair. And so they're fairly nibbling around the edges. No, there's going to be no big savings.
The one thing too is with his costs, that was for the project for septic system itself. There will still be some ancillary costs if we have to get like any porta potties or anything like that. It could be a couple days when they're transferring the connection.
I remember you were talking about
We did.
bringing in showers.
Potentially, yeah. We looked at all extremes. We had to look just to get an idea before, once we picked a bidder and moved forward, then we'd have a better idea of what the plan is and what kind of time frame that they would need and whatnot. Rough idea for us to advise what to expect.
Okay. Are there any other questions for either of these gentlemen? No, thank you very much for the detailed information.
My pleasure.
Just for clarification, we are good to go ahead with going up for proposals.
So we need to do an approval for the septic system so that. they can move
I don't
forward.
believe we're not, yeah,
I think it would be best to do a motion and have the formal board approval to submit our bids out.
okay. To
Of course,
submit
once
our
we get the bid
proposals.
before we award it, you'll be,
Yeah.
up or down, but I think it's good to start it off with the board approval.
Okay,
I move that the board authorize the putting out the bid for the septic as discussed.
And second,
okay. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
I,
Okay, thank you.
All right. We will do that.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
You betcha.
All right, let's see, we had Mr. Bonzer.
He
On.
messaged me, he's having connectivity issues.
Okay,
And apologize. We'll see what he said. He said he'll send an email out in the morning outlining where they're at with the cot. You know, things to send to you guys.
okay,
But yeah, no major information.
all right. Moving on then to the chief's report.
Thank you. Sent it out. Sorry, it was late, but I was out of town last week, so hope you had a chance to read it and be glad to answer any questions you all might have.
I have no questions.
Have any questions? We're good.
Okay, I had one question, request for a little more detail on page, I think it's 7. The district goal number 3 status report and the yellow, some delay difficulty. It basically said, oh, we've got some technical difficulties that are leading to, we're not ready yet. So I just asked Mr. Lemay if he could enlighten us a little bit more.
Sure. So this is one of our goals was to update our job descriptions. So for what are our different positions in the job descriptions. And I'll give you a little bit of a history and then I'll kind of give you a summary of our dilemma that we're at. Back 2018 and before 2018, we were dealing with a lot of what does a volunteer do? What is the requirements? What certifications do they have versus a career? And we're having a lot of challenges with that. And the decision was made and position descriptions were updated for firefighter and for lieutenant, basically making kind of all the requirements the same for volunteer, for a career member. And some of the sticky points are some of the certifications like hazmat, firefighter, officer, a lot of the points. So essentially what it said is in 2018, we adopted, and it was said that in 2020, all volunteers shall have all these certifications on a certain date. And right around the same time, COVID was going on, right around the same time, that was overlooked that there were most of our members that never got them. So our volunteers didn't get all these certs. And we have never fired them for it. And it's becoming more and more obvious that, well, our document still says that we should have for the current job description, and we haven't. So what it's really doing is it's putting us into a kind of a dilemma. On one hand, if we just said, thank you, we're talking between 10 and 13 of our volunteers, no more. Most of them being our senior volunteers, ones that have been around a long time, even before the changes had happened, before the decision was made. So on one hand, if we just say, okay, well, we just get rid of all the volunteers that didn't get these certs, it would decimate our volunteer program. We'd lose about half of our volunteers, a third to a half. On the other hand, if we update the job description and just say, okay, well, either we grandfathering is an option for maybe members that were with us before this decision was made, they were volunteer before this made, but we're going to say, okay, they're okay, but any volunteer moving forward shall get these certs.
Why can't the ones that don't have it, is there a reason why they don't want to get it?
There's two basic reasons. Some just, it's a lot of work and it's more than they are wanting to go and do is some. And then some have said that, I would just resign or you'd have to fire me and then we move on and not get it. We just have to fire them. They aren't willing to go and do it.
But what liability does that put us at if they don't have their
That's the next one.
certs?
That's the next one. The other one is our new folks that want to get it, but some of the tests are kind of tricky. They're kind of hard. They're having a hard time passing some of these written tests and they're trying and they're not passing them. So there's that if we don't. So like I said, that's why it's a dilemma. On one side, yeah, is there a liability? That's part of the research we're doing. What kind of liability do we have? There's nothing in the law that says we have to have certified firefighters. There's WAC, there's the administrative code and the state law that says you have to have certain levels of training, be trained up and do, which is the fire academy, which we do. So we meet all the state and the legal requirements, but there are industry standards that say these certifications are normal and standardized. And that's what a lot of the norms are. So that is the industry standard. We're not there. So this is the dilemma we're at.
So
I
that is a
still have,
liability then. That's a liability for you to make a decision not to make them.
there's a
complete
level of
the certs.
liability.
Yeah,
Sure.
no matter what their age is.
Yeah. So we're falling behind on the timeline because I was supposed to have a recommendation to chief by March and I don't, and I still don't. There's still some more information I'm trying to get. We're looking at getting some maybe comparables. What is other departments like us doing? Who's accepted that? Who hasn't? Are we the only ones that haven't done this? So there's still some more information that we want to get in order to make a decision. But essentially, what I need to do is get the chief a recommendation and he's going to have to make a decision on what we're doing. And there's hybrid options of all different ways we could do things. But essentially, we're really just in a dilemma of do we boot if they don't, or do we grandfather and move forward with anybody coming in now? And that's where we're at. I didn't want to put all that down on a.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
So
understand
you have to know
exactly.
that, what is that certification training? Before you
There's-
can even make that decision.
Yeah.
What is the certifications?
Yeah, what are the ones that-
Hazardous materials awareness, hazardous materials operations, firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and fire officer, fire instructor for officers. For firefighters, it's basically hazmat ops and firefighter. Those are the main things that are choking people down. But if you don't get those, you can't get the firefighter 2 because they're all sequential. So you have to get firefighter 1 before you have firefighter 2 before you get fire officer 1. So even our officers will be losing a majority of our volunteer officers because they never got the initial cert, so they can't get the officer cert, so they can't. So we'd be losing most of our volunteer officers as well. So that's the,
Well, I think the liability is what we need to worry about the most. I mean, look at how long have they been working and doing the job?
Yeah.
And are they doing the job correctly without having those certifications? Or are they just here taking a paycheck,
all
They're not
factors.
doing
They're all factors, right?
kind of thing? So if
Yeah.
they're not really contributing and doing and bettering themselves, then what's the point of keeping them on?
I would, I guess, I think if they are not contributing, I would expect that they would already have been excused. I think you need to take a very balanced approach. Look at all the factors.
Yeah.
Their commitment to the department, their experience, the essential nature of the training and certification, and make a balanced decision. But I think you need to take every angle into account and not just be kind of blindly following.
That's why it's a dilemma.
Yeah.
If it was an easy thing, it wouldn't even be here. It would just be a green
It's not
dot
done
instead of a
internally.
yellow dot.
I don't think so.
And how, if we were to lose those, say those volunteers, what's that gonna do for our staffing?
Well, that cuts our volunteer pool almost in half.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
what
we
does
saw-
do
it doesn't
for our
impact any of our
everyday
career.
staff?
It doesn't impact have anything to do with our career staff. They're all fully
But it
I
qualified.
does-
understand that.
Yeah, it does affect our ability to staff
Staff,
two
right.
two
stations.
stations.
You gotta take all those factors in.
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, I agree with Milt.
And
There
unfor-
are, yeah, it's, to a certain extent, I understood when the interest was to try and get everybody at the same standard. We wrote ourselves a set of standards that we intended to abide by, and we may have painted ourselves into a little bit of a tight corner there. There is, as Milt says, a lot of factors that are involved there. You've got people with a great deal of experience in other aspects of the job that could go way beyond whether or not you've ever taken instructor 1. Those people that have already been here for 5-6 years and mentoring others, whether or not they have passed the test about doing instruction really is moot. But we've told ourselves that these are the standards that we want to have. So, I think we painted ourselves into a bit of a small corner.
Yeah, to your point, it's a little bit subjective sometimes. It's like, well, if it was just clear that somebody's not pulling their weight, well, then as Milt said, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a little bit more clear. But we have plenty of volunteers that aren't certified that I think are doing a great job. And they're assets to us.
Okay.
That's the delay.
So they've had
Yeah.
on-the-job training.
Yeah.
What you're
Right.
saying?
For the most part, right?
I mean,
Okay.
I'm a person that can't take tests really well. So a lot of them, if they do have the experience, they have the hands-on, but they just can't pass the test, doesn't mean they're not capable of doing the job.
Yeah, and you can't get that certification if you don't pass the test.
Yeah, so I think we need to relook at our standards of what we have. But we also need to, like you said, see what other departments have done. Because if we've made our standards so high that it's, it's not gonna, they're never gonna qualify, then we need to rethink that.
We need to figure out what it is, because right now we're out of our own compliance. We've made this
Yeah.
the standard and we're not in our own compliance.
Yeah,
So what is that standard? We have to do it, document it and stick to it.
Yeah.
So that's why we're still back to this.
Yeah, thank you for that
Okay.
explanation.
Okay.
Were there any other questions for the chief on the chief's report? Okay, let's move on then to the discussion about the March 30th public meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I could suggest that we reorder the agenda just slightly, where I could talk about the strategic planning first. It might
Oh.
meld nicer into the topic of the meeting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Let's do the review of the
It was,
strategic plan.
it was brought to my attention the other day that we created a very elegant process for continuous review of our master plan and our strategic plan and our annual plan. And there was a critical activity that was supposed to happen last month. Unfortunately, I was not here and it didn't happen. So apologize, but I'm thinking that we can talk about that and have that review next month after we have this discussion. So I don't think it's a critical failure. So anyway, the thing that we, and frankly, I'm very proud of that we have done is we've had a very organized, linear and logical process where we've done strategic planning. And it's taken a while, but I think the product has been very thorough. It's been very durable. And some of y'all were involved in that process. Some of you were not. And I thought if I could spend about 3 or 4 minutes talking about what that all means and kind of puts everything into perspective. So I love using the whiteboard and I'm going to. So that's high. Is this for tall people?
I didn't put it up.
It is pretty high.
We need to have a little walkway here for us short people.
We obviously know you didn't put that up.
I can't even reach the top.
I can only reach the bottom. I think that was put in when Glenn Turner was the chief.
Oh, that explains it. Anyway, so I'll go back in history.
Here's standards for white.
Go back in history. Well, no.
They're all done.
Third time's a charm. That's okay. So go back in history to 2014, where districts 7 and 8 merged together. And at that time, as part of that process, a plan was created, which was called the Emergency Service Integration Plan, was authored. And I think that you and Dick Small put that together, right? By and large.
Dick Small with some wordsmithing from me occasionally.
So I'll give you both credit anyway. But anyway, it's a pretty well-developed plan talking about what we do as merged district. There was a whole bunch of things, finance, operational, and assets and everything. And it was really a very well-written and thorough plan on how we marry these two fire departments together. And basically we followed it amazingly. I mean, so we merged in 2015. And we actually followed this whole plan to 2015, 2016, and up to about 2017, where technically we accomplished everything that was in that plan, if I remember correctly. And it was, like I say, it really formed the department. And so I kind of see this as kind of the new beginning, if you will, the Easter, if you will. So at that point, then we started thinking about, and we had several questions about our mission, vision, and goals. And when we were doing a review in 2016, actually, on our vision, mission, and goals, several questions came up. Are these still valid? I mean, what do we want to do? How many people do we need? Things like that. And to really do what our service is. You know, I think we had a pretty good idea on what our vision was and our mission, but were we able to do it all? So in 2016, we conducted a study, master plan study, and we decided that instead of eating the elephant whole, we would divide it all up into digestible parts, and did. And so as we did that, we prioritized what were the most important things that we needed to address first, second, and third, and so forth. And so when we did that, we did have a master plan. We figured that staffing was the most important thing. I mean, we can have buildings, we can have vehicles, we can have equipment, but it's all for naught if we don't have people. So we spent, what was it, 6 months or so, where we convened work groups with board, we had volunteers, we had career staff, and we met in a facilitated workshop, several of them, and answered several questions. I mean, what do we need to do with people? Do we need career staff? Do we need volunteers? Can they both work together? And what do they need to do? And how many of them do we need to do our mission and vision? And so actually, after a lot of work, a lot of good work in 2016, we came out of that with what we called our staffing plans, master staffing plan. And it said basically that we could reasonably expect to attract and retain and hopefully keep competent about 2 companies worth of people. And, to staff basically 2 fire stations 24/7. Combination between career staff and volunteer staff, understanding that it was and still is very hard to get volunteers during work days, that we would have to rely predominantly on career staff to do that. And that was just about the same time that our career staff became a part of a union bargaining unit. So that played into the mix on what we were doing and not doing and everything. So we actually went through that whole process. And by the end of 2017, we had a pretty good staffing plan that identified the roles that needed to happen for the administrative staff, what areas needed to be covered, generally how we would deploy, how many people we would have. But so that gave us kind of a skeleton that said, okay, what we're really going to need is, 30 to 50 people that are competent to do all this work, and a mix between career and volunteer staff. So the next thing we did, and we called this part of the master plan, we called this phase 1. And so now that we had a pretty good idea what our goal for getting people and having people, how many and so much, how do we deploy them? So where do we put these people? Can they all respond from home, or do we continue to rely predominantly on shift-based scheduling? And by this time, we had been using a combination of home response and assignments to fixed shifts and so forth for a while. And we pretty much came to the agreement that we might have a periphery of home-based volunteer responders, but we're going to have to rely more heavily on scheduled staff, either volunteer or career. So that said that, okay, so what do we do? Where do we put them? And this is as part of this master plan that we looked at to decide, frankly, what are the logistics to moving people around? And if you look at a map of our district, we can't get away with one fire station, really. To do it right, we need a fire station on the west side, which is this building, and one on the east side, which is now being primarily covered by Station A1. But we could do it. We can do it, and we can continue to comply generally with Survey and Rating Bureau standards and do it from 2 stations. So this plan basically said, all right, we're going to take these people and deploy them in 2 locations. And a master plan of saying, where are they correctly located? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'll just add that was a significant revision to the previous planning.
Yes, it was.
At the time of the merger of the ESA, it explicitly said we were going to have 3 stations.
Right.
And all the planning that District 8 had done prior to the merger was 2 stations, and we had 1 on 7, and coming together was 3.
Exactly.
So it was a dramatic change, and there was an awful lot of thought and study and tons of meetings that we had there debating it. And we concluded that we could run a heck of a lot more efficiently out of 2 stations. But it's tough to do because it's 2, they've got to be rock solid.
Well,
Really well.
But you also have to remember is when you did that, you also had them on 410s. They were on they weren't on 24s. So Now that you've made them onto 24s, it's a lot different.
Yep.
It's another step that evolved from
Well,
this.
yeah, I'll talk about
I
that in a
didn't want to
minute. but-
derail you, but I just thought it was important to recognize.
Yeah, well, this was
how
a
significant
critical,
it changed that.
critical piece. And Milt's right, we did a lot of studying, looking at the coverage of the stations. I spent a lot of time driving around in my car, mileage checking and stopwatch checking and stuff. Seriously, I mean, that's what you need to do. So we knew that in 2 stations, and we were, during this period, we were reducing down from basically 7 facilities to the goal being 3, one being not a fire station, but a training center. And, but District 7, when they had 3 stations, and we 8 had 3 stations. And so we weaned down from 6 fire stations, basically down to 2 in this process. And we sold a bunch of property and so forth. So deployment, and this happened mostly in 2018, 2019, we call this phase 2. And so with building on that, and really this is literally building on previous work that we did, we did what we called phase 3, and these were all the things that need to make it happen. So we had incident readiness and response plan. We had training and education. We had community resources. We had facilities and equipment. We had major plans on how we'd accomplish all of this. And so we said, we defined that we needed these people with this many competencies under the incident readiness response, and they would retain those through the training and education plan. And they would be housed and use equipment based on a facilities and equipment plan. And that we would do more lip service, frankly, to community resources, working with the community, informing them, training them, and so forth. And this was then known, and most of these happened in about 2020. And we called this phase 3. So in a nutshell, in about 4 or 5 years, this is the work that was done. And change was evolutionary through all of that, the staffing, how we staffed them, how many people we had, the mix between career and volunteer, all of that. But it was all evolving based on the plan, which is first time I've ever seen that happen in my working career with the state. It just never happened that way there. So we logically came to the conclusion, this is what the model we want to have, and this is how we're going to do it. And since then, what we have done, continue to do, is refine this on an annual basis with our annual business plan. Which again, is all based upon all of that work as well. So and Milt asked a great question the other day, and I pondered on it and decided that I didn't know. So I've encapsulated all of this information into one document that kind of takes the different documents that we have regarding all of this to explain that. Now, I don't expect you to read it tonight or anything, but
There's a test tomorrow afternoon, right?
there will be a test.
Let's see
Yeah.
how we do with tests. We already know Gloria said she doesn't do that.
I don't do tests well. I'm more hands-on.
I don't like, I'm a head.
But essentially, those documents have been adopted over these different periods. And as you read through them, you'll probably notice some stuff that's not exactly the way it is now. I mean, things have evolved since then, but those documents are as accurate as the date that they were adopted, which is anywhere from 2017 on. But what we have done every year is we look at our business plan. I have gone through and kind of reviewed this stuff on my own to see, basically, but it's not been a formal process. And that's, I think, is what the work that we've been trying to do the last year when we updated the forcing us to regularly review our strategic direction. And that's the top document under tab 1 is the schedule for our review of our strategic master plan. And it includes all of these documents, the cascading effect of all these documents. Up to and including the bond measure that levy measure that we're seeking this fall is as a result of the work of this plan. So that's the 5-minute historical bringing us up to perspective. Does that all make sense? Do you have any questions at all? Or again, some of you probably have good or bad memories of all the meetings that were involved with all of this, but it really has been, I think, a labor of love.
Nice.
So all of those steps are defined in that book there. And like I say, would encourage you to kind of thumb through it, after the meeting. So
Cool. Thank you.
any questions? So leading up to the meeting we had on the 30th, again, I had referred to in some of the slides that we had back to the work that we did. It didn't include it in this detail. Didn't want to put anybody to sleep, but it's important for y'all to remember or learn about what the basis for the the work that we are currently doing is on. So as far as the presentation, again, what I tried to do was put a logical progression of things, talking a little bit about our history of what we're doing and the challenges that we have faced in trying to do all of this. And then recognize the fact that we have created a vision, mission, and values as a result of our master plan. And we have created a measurement, a benchmark called the target levels of service, to provide the service, measurement of how effective our service provision is over time. And basically talked about and taking a little credit for the work that the district has done to get to where it is, and determining the fact that to do what we really believe we need to do, it's going to cost money. All boils down to money. And that it's more than we currently receive in our current revenues, and we need more. If you want this level of service, this is what it's going to cost. And then frame that question to the public and voters to make that decision. So that was the idea.
Yeah, I think our plan for having the meeting was sound, and I think the information that you provided was excellent. And I would just make a very public comment that you knocked it out of the park. You did a great job in an area that is not your forte. And so I think you did a terrific job. I guess the question that I would ask, or that we should ask ourselves is, we had, what would we say, 4, maybe 5 citizens attend the meeting. Is there anything we could have done or should have done differently with regard to notice? Are we going to take an opportunity to do it again before the election, the primary? And if so, kind of how would we do it a little bit different in terms of trying to get more people involved?
Not doing on the opening day of Mariners. I know that was probably a big. We don't have to worry about that the rest of this year.
No.
Right, don't do it on the
Special days.
those special days, the
Sports days.
all-star, the all-star weekend or those kinds of things. Yeah.
Could you do it again? Do you feel like you?
Absolutely. I mean, frankly, for me, it was just sort of a test run. Maybe it was better. There weren't a lot of people there, but again, it's trying to get a compelling message out. And that was absolutely right. This is not my forte. So
Is there a way of videotaping it that we could put it on our website?
It was
It was
We did.
videotaped, and it's on the website, so people can actually
Yes.
relook at it there.
Yeah.
So that would be something that we need to put in the newsletter to say, presentation is in that. And then hopefully it'll draw interest for people
Yeah.
to go. to that.
Building on that, I mentioned to the chief that night, I think, I was reflecting on a presentation that had been given by, I forget, it was Washington Park Commissioners Association. They had chief information officers talking about how they do things. We had a couple of people from Everett and Auburn talking. And one of the things that they had done for levies that they were promoting was a series of short videos by the chief,
Mhm.
just, a minute or two
Oh,
at
yeah.
most. And each one pointed at a particular topic. And as I was envisioning it, you could take your presentation and pull out the 5 to 10 kind of key points and just break them into short little videos. And then, over a period of 2 or 3 weeks, roll them out on social media, and have them posted on the website. And really, because I think video is going to be the most effective way to connect with people. It's just, that's the language. of
That's
our
where we are,
society.
yeah.
So Mel, you had sent us that thing that happened with Tumwater and Olympia, their presentation, what they did and the negativity they got from that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we need to make sure that we're not doing any of that kind of thing. That we're not promoting.
Yeah,
the-
I think that the complaint there was that, it was very much promotional in character.
Yeah,
Rather than
yeah.
factual in the
Mm,
way they present.
More that versus information kind of thing. So, yeah. Because we can't promote that we want people to vote for the levy. We just have to tell them why.
Why?
Here's
Why
the
we're
need
asking.
is, what the
Yeah,
need
the
is.
timeline.
Here's the situation.
Yeah.
Here's what we're proposing.
Yeah,
Here's how it'll work.
Yeah.
And here's, if it doesn't work, here's how it'll play out.
yeah,
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is what Chief's presentation was.
Yeah.
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 Good.
Yeah, I really like the way it's framed, where we have these different options. And there's a cost and a benefit for each one. And we, as a community, we get to choose
Mhm.
what we want.
Yeah, we can certainly do it again. But I think Milt's right, it's a combination of things. We are due for our second quarter newsletter, which will probably have more information. We just need to be careful not to overly weigh ballot measure stuff on our newsletter. But we have established a page on our website that has all of this information on it. We're trying to get as much notice out there and have as many ways that people can find the information as possible. Like some people like to read it in a document like me, or they want to social media it or look on their phone or computer. There's a variety of ways, but we're going to try to have a presence there that's consistent. And this has been the good work of the COT, has been able to work very closely with Brandon and Heidi and I, and making sure their mission or message is consistent with what we're putting out.
Yeah, that's important.
So
Okay. Thank- Yeah. Any other questions or comments about the information and that was presented on March 30th and May, and certainly will be presented in the future? I think your concept of breaking things up and putting them in on video in those different,
Bite-sized chunks.
yeah, and in all different kinds of places. I think that's an excellent idea.
More work.
Yeah, the thought that I did have with that is how would you do that? Would you have somebody, chief start his presentation and somebody's just going to stand there with a camera and capture it, and then we're going to put it on that way? Or would we hire somebody to do a more professional presentation of more professional recording of the presentation the chief would make? I think it is important that, the chief is the focal point and makes that presentation.
We are planning on having educational videos made through SPSCC.
Okay,
If that's what you're talking about.
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, nice.
excellent. Okay, we're ready to move on then.
We are, I think, except I wanted to go back to this and I don't know if I'm out of order, but I wanted to just go back to the strategic plan review for a second.
Mhm.
And I'm the guy who's guilty of instigating this. But
That's nice.
I wanted to just reflect that the concept, and to go back to the policy and procedure work that we did last year, we're looking at our planning process, our budgeting process, and our evaluation process, and how those all link together. And they used to be kind of a scattershot, and the whole point was to integrate them so that they all work like a treadmill. And so this is the stage where the idea is looking at our long-term planning that we've done. And is it still consistent with where we're at? And if it's not, we've got a window between now and July where we can spend some time working on this and updating. And then starting August, September, now it's planning for next year, it's budgeting. We have to get this done so that the chief knows what to plan for next year. He has to do that, so we have a budget, and then we get to evaluate them, and then we get to do this again. So it's just a constant cycle. So that's the concept.
So if you look at the under tab 1, it shows that the chair and myself should have sat down and kind of kicked this procedure off for discussion at the March meeting. So between today and our May meeting now, that you and I need to sit down and kick that off for an intelligent discussion at the May meeting. So
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. And we've had a lot of, everybody's been involved in this process and in the presentation and all that. And it's been really a lot of teamwork that I've seen, especially the COT has done a great job of discussing these issues, raising questions and things that I think have worked really well. So
All right.
anyway, so an action item, I guess, would be Doug and I getting together prior to the next.
Okay, absolutely. And in terms of, I think, a culmination of kind of this discussion here and what we just had, we're need to talk about the resolutions. And we have those before us.
They were sent out.
They were in
I don't
draft.
know if Heidi made copies. Did you?
I did, but I have them here.
Obviously, these were drafted by legal counsel.
Yeah.
Who gets paid by the word. And
Yeah.
it sufficiently identified everything that needs to happen in gory detail. There are two. Resolution 4 is for placing this as a ballot measure on the primary election.
Yeah.
And then resolution 5 is for placing that measure on the general election, should we need to do that. And when you look at 5, I think it says something conditional. But my request and the ask would be that the board approve both, and I will submit both of them to the county auditor. And then fortunately, if we don't need the general election, if we don't have to have 2 elections, of course.
Yeah.
So, but at least it starts the clock
Yeah.
for getting all of this stuff done. I think the resolutions point out all of the steps that are necessary, and some of which I was not aware I was supposed to be doing and haven't done in the past. But creating and posting and asking for the formation of on committee and submitting some documents and all of that. So, but by board approval, then we can begin doing all of those things. So, yeah, it's March, I know, but it's amazing how quickly this will all be done by May and June. So
It's April.
Slip it away.
Whatever. Just lost a month. I was on vacation for a week. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and as you said, sorry, just one second. No, section 10 on the second one, number 5 says that, the chief is authorized to withdraw the 05 resolution, the second one, in the event that the first one passes.
Right.
No,
So move that we adopt resolutions 2304 and 05, providing for the submission of a levy and contingently the second levy if needed. First one in August, second in November. That's presented.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion that we want to have about this?
No.
Seeing none, all right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, both of those resolutions are approved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, now the fun starts.
All right, I think we're down to the secretary report.
So I sent out the minutes from our last board meeting and I had no input or changes on those.
No, I think I responded and said it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, no
Yeah.
changes.
There were no changes.
I didn't have. any
Okay,
corrections.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for March 14th, 2023 as presented.
I'll second.
all right, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
And are there any questions on the warrants?
No questions from me.
I have no questions.
None for me.
Okay,
So I make a motion that we approve the warrants for set date 4/9/23 as presented.
And I'll second it.
moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
I don't really have any announcements, but I'll let you know that I'm currently working on the annual state financial report that has to be submitted to the state auditor by the end of May. And I'm happy to share that with anybody that's interested. It's close to being done, not quite done yet, but a lot of it's done online where you just upload documents and answer questions and that kind of thing. And then there are notes, the financial notes, which I could hand out to you guys and share those with you. Chief's reviewing them right now. Well, not literally right now.
Multitasking down there.
But at some point, he'll be reviewing them.
Yeah,
When you get them done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in taking. a
Yeah.
look.
Okay,
I'd like to see.
but that's all I have for
Okay.
announcements.
with that, any comments from the commissioners? I will just echo again, Chief, you did a great job on the 30th.
Thank you.
I really was, I honestly, I was very impressed.
Yeah.
Little Jack Daniels helped, so.
Don't
Just
put
a
that in the
little
notes.
Jack
Yeah.
Daniels.
Won't admit how much.
That was the incentive that was afterwards, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, review and follow up.
Ah, yes. Basking in the glory here. Brent and his team will be working on RFPs for finally our septic project at Station 81, starting tomorrow morning for tonight. Doug and I will work on our first regular master plan review presentation at the May meeting. The document that you have that I handed out, I'm gonna send that to Heidi and she'll have that on our website so you can gather it all together. These are existing documents, by the way, that are scattered in 4 million other documents. So it was basically gleaning stuff that was worked on over time. So, but we, put it into one package and it will be available on the website. Having the resolutions having been approved and will need to be signed, and I've asked Heidi to have 2 copies of each resolution for each to sign. Will be submitted to the county auditor this week, so and I'll keep you posted on other things that need to happen.
Okay.
I think that's about it.
All right. Then I see we have our quarterly review. performance review, so we will not adjourn, but we'll be, following the meeting, we'll go into executive session for discussion of that, and then we'll return in approximately 30 minutes. Make that approximately 40 minutes. And
We don't have to go with the number.
and no decisions will be made.
Are you serious, 40 minutes or 30?
I think you can do 40, you can always go longer.
Okay, all right. Oh, 30 minutes then.
Okay, yeah, you can always expand it.
Okay.
Or extend it.
Have we done Heidi's review? That's what I'm thinking about that. Have we done your
No,
review?
I sent out my review that the chief had done, and
Yeah.
there were crickets.
But we haven't finalized it, so we're behind schedule
I
on
just don't
Heidi's.
remember discussing it. In executive session. We haven't discussed it with you.
Yeah, I think we discussed it in our executive,
I
but
just
we just
never
haven't
done
had
that.
it with Heidi.
You have to do it. So, or can you just pause?
It's, yeah, no, you'll end the recording.